A powerful billionaire threw his 8-year-old son out of the house after the boy damaged his most prized possession in a moment of anger. Everyone thought the father would calm down and bring him back within hours, but days turned into weeks, and the boy was left to survive on the streets alone. No family member dared to intervene. The staff stayed silent. The world watched in shock as the child wandered the city, hungry and cold, while his father refused to take him back. Then one day, the billionaire saw something on his phone that made his hands tremble and his heart stop. A stranger had recorded a video of his son on the street, and what the boy was doing in that video changed everything. What the father saw in those few seconds shattered the wall of pride he had built and forced him to face the terrible mistake he had made. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Victor Cross was one of the richest men in the country. His name appeared on magazine covers and business news channels. He owned hotels, real estate companies, and investment firms. People admired his success, but those who knew him personally understood that Victor valued control above everything. His mansion was spotless, organized, and ruled by strict routines. Everything had its place, and nothing was allowed to go wrong. Victor's wife had passed away years earlier, leaving him to raise their son alone. The boy's name was Daniel, and he was 8 years old, quiet, sensitive, and always trying to earn his father's attention. But Victor was distant. He worked long hours, traveled often, and treated parenting like managing an employee. Daniel learned early that love in that house came with conditions. Victor's most prized possession was a rare luxury car he kept in a private section of the garage. It was a limited edition model, one of only a few in the world, custom painted in deep midnight blue. Victor rarely drove it. He polished it himself every weekend, running his hands along the curves of the metal like it was something sacred. For him, that car represented achievement, status, and perfection. Guests were never allowed near it. Even the household staff had been told never to touch it. Daniel had been warned many times, never go near the car, never open the garage, never, under any circumstances, touch it. The boy nodded every time, but deep down he felt confused. Why did his father care more about a car than about him? One afternoon, Daniel came home from school, excited. He had received a gold star from his teacher for a story he had written. He ran into the house holding the paper and found his father in the study on a phone call. Daniel waited quietly by the door. When Victor finally hung up, Daniel stepped forward, holding up his work with a shy smile. "Dad, look, I got a gold star," he said. Victor glanced at the paper for barely a second. "That's nice. Go do your homework," he replied, already turning back to his computer. Daniel stood there for a moment, the smile fading from his face. He left the room without another word. Later that evening, Daniel asked if they could have dinner together. Victor said he had a meeting and told the housekeeper to feed the boy. Daniel ate alone at the long dining table, staring at the empty chairs. After finishing, he went upstairs to his room and sat by the window, watching the gates of the mansion. He waited, hoping his father would come say goodnight, but Victor never did. That night, as Daniel lay in bed, something inside him began to crack. He didn't understand why nothing he did was ever enough. He didn't understand why his father had time for business calls and cars, but not for him. The next day, something inside Daniel snapped. He had been holding his feelings in for so long, trying to be good, trying to be quiet, trying to make his father notice him. But the rejection from the night before hurt too much. He went down to the garage, knowing it was forbidden. He opened the door and walked inside. The luxury car sat there, gleaming under the lights. Daniel stared at it. All the anger, sadness, and loneliness he had been holding came rushing out. He picked up a metal tool from a nearby shelf and, with tears streaming down his face, he struck the side of the car. Then he did it again. And again. The paint scratched, the metal dented, the windshield cracked. He didn't stop until his arms were tired and his chest was heaving with sobs. When Victor came home and saw what had happened, his face turned white, then red. He stood frozen for several seconds, staring at the damaged car. Then he turned slowly toward Daniel, who stood in the corner, still holding the tool, tears on his cheeks. Victor's voice was ice cold. "What have you done?" Daniel tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Victor's anger exploded. He shouted that Daniel was ungrateful, destructive, and out of control. He said he had given him everything, and this was how he repaid him. Daniel tried to explain that he just wanted his father to care, but Victor didn't listen. In a moment of rage, Victor grabbed Daniel by the arm, dragged him to the front door, and pushed him outside. "Get out," Victor said. "If you can't respect what I've built, then you don't belong here." He slammed the door shut. Daniel stood on the front steps, shaking and confused. He knocked on the door, but no one answered. The staff inside heard everything but were too afraid to intervene. Hours passed. Daniel sat on the steps as the sun went down. He thought his father would open the door any minute and tell him to come back inside, but the door stayed closed. As night fell, it grew cold. Daniel pulled his jacket tighter and walked toward the gate. The security guard looked uncomfortable, but didn't stop him. Victor had given orders. The boy was not to be let back in. Daniel walked out onto the street alone. He had no money, no phone, no plan. He only knew he wasn't allowed to go home. For the first few nights, Daniel slept in a park near the mansion, hoping his father would change his mind. He used his backpack as a pillow and covered himself with his jacket. He was hungry, scared, and confused. Other homeless people nearby noticed him but kept their distance. On the third day, an older man offered him half a sandwich. Daniel ate it quickly, realizing he hadn't eaten a real meal since leaving the house. The man told him it was dangerous to stay in one place and that he should keep moving. Daniel listened and began walking through the city, searching for safe spots to sleep and food to eat. Inside the mansion, life continued. Victor returned to his daily routine as if nothing had happened. He didn't mention Daniel's name. The staff whispered among themselves but said nothing directly to him. One of the housekeepers, an older woman named Rose, who had worked for the family for years, finally gathered the courage to speak. She found Victor in his office one evening and asked quietly if he planned to bring Daniel back. Victor's expression hardened. "He made his choice when he destroyed my property," he said coldly. Rose tried to argue that Daniel was just a child who needed his father, but Victor cut her off. "This conversation is over," he said. Rose left the room with tears in her eyes, knowing there was nothing more she could do. Days turned into a week, then two. Daniel learned how to survive. He found places to sleep under bridges, in alleyways and near shelters. He learned which restaurants threw away food at night and which areas were safer than others. Other homeless people began to recognize him. Some were kind, others warned him to stay alert. One evening, while sitting near a dumpster behind a bakery, Daniel met an elderly man named Paul. Paul had been living on the streets for years. He shared his blanket with Daniel and taught him how to stay warm and avoid trouble. Despite his own struggles, Paul showed Daniel more kindness in those few days than his father had in months. One cold afternoon, Daniel saw a young woman sitting on the sidewalk crying. She looked even more lost than he felt. She was shivering and her clothes were torn. Daniel walked over and sat beside her. He didn't say much, just stayed close. After a moment, he reached into his small bag and pulled out a piece of bread someone had given him earlier. He broke it in half and handed her the larger piece. The woman looked at him surprised. "You need it more than I do," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "We both need it," he replied. She took the bread and they sat together in silence. Neither of them knew that a passerby had recorded the moment on a phone and posted it online. The video spread quickly. It showed a small boy, dirty and thin, sitting on a sidewalk and sharing his only food with a crying stranger. The caption read, "This child has nothing, but he still gave half of what he had. Where are his parents?" People shared the video thousands of times. Comments poured in, some angry, some heartbroken. News outlets picked up the story. Reporters began investigating who the boy was. Within days, someone recognized Daniel from school photos. His identity was revealed, the son of Victor Cross, the billionaire. The public was outraged. How could a man with so much money leave his own child on the streets? Victor first saw the video while sitting in his office scrolling through his phone. At first he didn't recognize the boy. Then his eyes focused on the face. It was Daniel, his son, thin, dirty, and alone. Victor's hands began to tremble. He watched the video again and again, unable to look away. The boy he had thrown out was not angry or bitter. He was kind. He was giving. Even with nothing, Daniel still cared about someone else. Victor felt something break inside him. For the first time since his wife's death, he cried. The media pressure became unbearable. Reporters camped outside the mansion. Victor's business partners called, concerned about the damage to his reputation. But Victor didn't care about his image anymore. All he could think about was his son. He remembered the day Daniel had shown him the gold star, the hopeful look in his eyes, and how he had dismissed him without a second thought. He remembered all the times Daniel had asked to spend time together and how he had always said he was too busy. He remembered the night he had thrown his own child out into the cold. Shame washed over him in waves. Victor left the mansion immediately. He drove through the city, searching every park, every alley, every corner where Daniel might be. Hours passed. He asked strangers if they had seen a small boy. Most ignored him. Some recognized him from the news and turned away in disgust. As night fell, Victor's desperation grew. He called police, hired private investigators, and posted messages online offering a reward for information. But Daniel was nowhere to be found. The boy had learned to hide, to move, to stay invisible. Days went by. Victor barely slept. He kept searching, refusing to give up. Then one evening, a man called the number Victor had posted online. The man said he had seen a boy matching Daniel's description near a shelter on the east side of the city. Victor drove there immediately. When he arrived, he saw a small figure sitting on the steps outside, wrapped in a thin blanket. It was Daniel. Victor's heart broke all over again. He got out of the car slowly and walked toward his son. Daniel looked up, his face expressionless. He didn't run, he didn't smile, he just stared. Victor knelt down in front of him, tears streaming down his face. "Daniel," he whispered, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." His voice cracked. "I was wrong, I was angry and stupid and I hurt you. You didn't deserve any of this. Please forgive me, please come home." Daniel didn't respond right away. He looked at his father, the man who had once been his whole world, and then had thrown him away like he was nothing. "Why now?" Daniel asked quietly. "Because you saw the video? Because people are mad at you?" Victor shook his head, choking on his words. "No, because I finally saw who you really are. You're better than me. You always were. I just couldn't see it. I was too proud, too selfish. I'm sorry, Daniel. I love you." It was the first time Victor had said those words in years. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He wanted to believe his father, but he was scared. Victor reached out slowly and wrapped his arms around his son. Daniel stiffened at first, then slowly, hesitantly, leaned into the embrace. They stayed like that for a long time, two broken people trying to find their way back to each other. Victor whispered apologies over and over, promising he would never hurt him again. Finally, Daniel nodded. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, Dad." Victor took Daniel home that night. He carried him inside, past the staff who cried with relief, and up to his room. He ran a warm bath, found clean clothes, and made sure Daniel had a hot meal. For the first time in weeks, Daniel slept in a real bed. Victor sat beside him all night, watching him breathe, terrified that if he looked away, his son might disappear again. In the days that followed, Victor made changes. He cut back on work. He ate meals with Daniel. He asked about his day, his dreams, his feelings. He apologized again and again, not just with words, but with actions. He sold the damaged luxury car and donated the money to a homeless shelter in Daniel's name. He started a foundation to help children in crisis, inspired by the kindness his son had shown on the street. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. It wasn't perfect. There were hard conversations and painful memories, but they were together, and that was what mattered. Months later, during an interview about his foundation, Victor was asked what had changed him. He paused, looked directly at the camera and said, "My son taught me that love isn't about what you own or how much you achieve. It's about who you show up for when it matters. I almost lost him because I forgot that. I'll never forget again." The interview ended with a photo of Victor and Daniel standing side by side, smiling. It wasn't the image of a perfect family, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.